Greetings, everyone. I want to talk today more in depth about a very powerful configuration that's in the sky and in our charts. And I've mentioned this in a few earlier videos, but I want to go into it in more depth today because it is such a powerful configuration. It will be actively at play in this upcoming full moon on August 19th, but it is in an ongoing way in a powerful configuration squaring the lunar nodes. And I am talking about this combination in Capricorn of Ixion, Pholus, Quaoar, and Ceres. The four of them will be in a close configuration in a stellium in Capricorn for most of 2024. Ixion, Pholus, and Quaoar will be squaring the lunar nodes from March 2024 to January 2025. What's also powerfully significant is Quaoar and Ixion have been in a dance with each other for a very long time. As I'll talk about in a few minutes, they're very similar in terms of the length of their orbits. They have been within a 10-degree orb with each other since 1939 and will stay within a 10-degree orb with each other until 2051. That's 111 years. So most of us will have them in our chart within that 10-degree orb. And they are now in a much closer conjunction and will be within a 5-degree orb from 1962 to 2046. And they are in that tight orb with each other in Capricorn from 2022 to 2039. So I'm throwing out a lot of dates here, but the key to take in is that these two, Ixion and Quaoar, have been in and are in an ongoing dance with each other in the sky and in our charts, and now in an even more profound configuration as part of this stellium with Pholus and Ceres, and because they're squaring the lunar nodes. Remember that from that evolutionary astrology perspective, when planetary bodies are squaring the lunar nodes, it's something karmically that's being brought to our attention that we need to address and deal with to be on a path of our evolutionary growth. So what is the story that these planetary bodies are telling us? What is the theme that they're bringing into our lives in this time, individually and collectively? Let me show you where they are in the chart, and then we'll dive into a deeper exploration of what this means. I've pulled up for you the upcoming chart of the full moon on August 19th, which I'll be talking about soon in another video. But you can see the combination here. Ixion, Pholus, now Ceres, Quaoar. They are squaring the lunar nodes in Libra and Aries. And again, this is an ongoing configuration that's occurring for most of this year. So it is a lesson, it is a theme that's being called to our attention for us to work this. And from an evolutionary astrology perspective, you look at those planetary bodies squaring the lunar nodes, and how you work that through is the lunar node that they're applying to, in this case, the south node in Libra. So I do believe, being in Capricorn, this combination is about the structures of our society as well as our own individual patterns. And it's calling us to make changes to South Node in Libra, be more in balance, be more in right relationship, in order North Node in Aries to move into new forms. We are in such a critical time with this transition into the age of Aquarius, and there's so many layers of our healing and transformation that we're being called into in order to move into these new paradigms, in order to co-create this new world together. And I believe this combination is powerfully telling us what we need to work through in order to be moving forward into this transmutation, into Homo luminous ones, into beings of light and love, to be manifesting and co-creating this new world in the Aquarian age, to be in that higher consciousness. So let's unpack what this story is about. And what you have in this configuration is an interesting diversity of planetary objects. Ixion is a Kuiper Belt object, as is Quaoar. Pholus is a healing centaur, part of that belt of centaurs that Melanie Reinhardt and I were talking about, that include Chiron, Cheroklo, Pholus, and Nisus. And then we have Ceres, which is in the asteroid belt, that belt between Mars and Jupiter. And Ceres is our largest asteroid in that asteroid belt. So already we've got this diversity of energies. And with Ixion and Quaoar being Kuiper Belt objects, these have recently come into our awareness. Ixion was discovered in May 22nd, 2001, and Quaoar was discovered June 4th, 2002. So they've only recently come into our consciousness. And Alan Clay and others have done incredible work to begin to explore and unpack what are the archetypal meanings of some of these new planetary bodies that have come into our consciousness. And remember, what we've seen over time is as these planetary objects or beings come into our conscious awareness, they're activating something within us that we're needing to become aware of. They're calling us to integrate whatever their energies are, whatever their theme is, into our conscious awareness, individually and collectively, as part of our own spiritual growth and development. So what are the lessons that these Kuiper Belt objects are bringing to us? And I want to dive most deeply into the meaning of Ixion in particular today. I think this is a very complex Kuiper Belt object, and I really respect Alan Clay and others' exploration of their meaning. And I have a bit of a different take on this planetary body, and my version is not the right version. It's just another perspective to deepen our exploration and understanding of what this planetary body means in our charts, in our lives. And again, I think of them as planetary beings. In my Aquarian shamanic astrology class, we honor the way in which the planets have their own consciousness, and we can learn about them through their mythology. We can learn about them through understanding their physical characteristics and movements. This is the law of correspondences, which I came to really understand and respect through my training in herbalism, where I realized through my training at Avena Botanicals and through Deb Soul and her gifts as an herbalist, that when you connect with plants, that their shape, their color, where they grow, is communicating to you their characteristics and their medicine. But then what I also learned in my herbal training is that as we drop into meditation and commune with a plant that we're in relationship with, when we open to that connection and honor the consciousness of all around us, then that flower, that plant, that herb can communicate directly to us what its medicine is. I believe this is how the shamans, the indigenous cultures, the ancient peoples knew the medicinal plants, not by doing endless years of research, but by communicating and communing with the plants, to be in relationship with them, to be guided by them as to what their medicines are. And from my perspective, we can do that with the planets. So I encourage you to be in your own meditation or shamanic journey, attuning to the energies of these Kuiper Belt objects and really allowing them to communicate to you what their meaning is, what their energies are, what their medicine is to us in this time. So that's a part of my own exploration of these Kuiper Belt objects that I'm talking about today. So Ixion, and let me just note, I call this planet Ixion rather than it's commonly referred to as Ixion, and both pronunciations are correct. But I think Ixion, with the emphasis on the I in the middle of the name, somehow reflects some of the archetypal meaning of this planet. And I've talked some about the Greek myth related to this character before, but let me review it. And then we're going to look at the discovery chart of this planet to get more insight about its meaning for us. But in the Greek myth, Ixion was the king of Lapiths and very much a character caught in his own desires and impulses. From my psychoanalytic training, this would be being very caught in and identified with the id, with those unconscious impulses and desires. They were running his life. You could also say that he was very much identified with and mired in his ego. I am important. What I want, what I feel I need, what my impulses are what matter. So in his engagement with others, and the story unfolds telling how he went to marry and he is meant to pay the bride price to the father of the bride. And instead of paying that bride price, he neglected that convention and didn't want to take that action. The father-in-law then tried to set that right by taking some of Ixion's horses in payment for this arrangement with his marrying, Ixion's marrying his daughter. Ixion, in anger that this would happen, that his father-in-law would do this, then invited his father-in-law to a banquet and impulsively pushed him into a fire of coal and wood and burned him to death. So you get the sense of this man who's driven by his impulses and his desires and his anger and his fear and acting out without concern about the consequences. Well, this leads to his being shunned and neglected by others and outcast because he has so violated these norms of kinship and rules that keep our cultures, our societies stable. So Ixion went mad because now everything's out of control. So he didn't learn from that experience or mature or repent or realize the error of his ways to grow into more capacity to see his behavior and make amends and evolve. Instead, he just stayed caught in his own anger, insanity, and meltdown over what had occurred and the fact that now his life was in chaos. Zeus, out of pity, invites him to Olympus. Ixion goes to Olympus. Here he's being given a second chance. And instead of then changing his behavior, being aware of how he has created such chaos in his life before, instead, he continues to operate out of his impulses and desires, lusts after Hera, Zeus's wife, goes to make love with her or rape her. Zeus realizes what's happening, makes this cloud that appears like Hera. And when Ixion makes love with her, out of that results this lineage of wild centaurs who are operating out of impulse and desire and that wild, primitive kind of behavior. Ixion still has continued to operate out of his ego, out of his desires, out of his impulses, out of his anger, out of his fear, not learning his lessons. And Zeus ends up having him struck by a thunderbolt and put on a fiery wheel to spin in punishment through all eternity. So this is a dark tale. This is a stark story about someone very much mired in those desires, impulses, acting out, greed, ego. So how are we to understand this in our charts? How are we to understand this in its meaning in the sky, in the chart at this time? I've been exploring it in my own life, in my own chart, and in interactions with people that I'm doing readings with. And I've come to believe that this point in our charts, and look at where it is in your birth chart. I believe that it is where we are called to face that part of us, that unconscious, deep part of us that Freud called the id, that can operate out of reactivity, impulse, desires. We all have that mammalian brain. We all have that limbic system within us that can operate out of fight or flight, fear, anger, reactivity, impulse. We all have that within us. And Joe Dispenza has helped us realize that so much of our actions, so many of our actions, so much of our behavior, 90 to 95% of how we operate in the world is coming from our unconscious. Take that in. If most of our actions and behavior is coming out of our unconscious, how do we work with that to be in a more centered, stable place as we're being called to move into higher consciousness? So part of what I believe in terms of Ixion's coming into our awareness at this time, starting in 2001, is that we're being called to look at those ways we can function unconsciously, those ways that we can be caught in our reactivity or our impulsivity, that we can operate out of our desires or out of our anger or out of our fear. And we're being called to see it. Just as Ixion appeared to us in the sky, we're called to see, bring into the light of consciousness that part of ourselves. And then as we do that, we are able to honor that that's part of us, but be in a witness self that is able to then not be identified with that as our nature and not identified with our ego, but able to come back to alignment with our true self and our soul self. Rumi, in his poetry, has this great line that if your anger or your fear is knocking at the door, invite them in for tea. In other words, we all have these reactive, impulsive aspects of ourselves. We all have fear. We all have anger. We all have those desires that we want what we want in this moment. The key is open your awareness to that. Allow those to be part of you. And then you're not acting out on them unconsciously. You're in your witness self. You're able to observe these aspects of yourself and make choices from a more conscious place. So Ixion is calling us to see those aspects of ourselves. I also believe in talking with a number of people that are living their lives more consciously, which is so this community, that where Ixion is in our charts can also reflect where we may experience those interactions with the Ixions in the world. It's really remarkable when I look at where this planet is in my chart, the house it's in, the aspects it's in, that arena, that area of life is where I have felt targeted at times and struck by this behavior of others that feels like it's coming from reactivity, projection, impulse, the unconscious. So it may be both where we have to face those aspects of ourselves and where we may face those energies in the world and how we're called to navigate that. And part of what I think the deeper meaning of this is, in being on the earth plane, we are in the realm of polarity. We are in the realm of duality. And particularly in this last 5,000 years, when we've been exploring being more caught in our sense of separation and individuation, our exploration of our individuality, our exploration of our minds, I think we've gotten more caught in that realm of duality. And part of what this planetary being is saying is face the polarity within you, the light and the dark within you, face the duality in our world, be conscious of it, and then able to make your choices consciously from the light of consciousness. And also, as we understand we're in this dance with polarity and duality in this realm, we can come back to our hearts, come out of our minds and into our hearts, and then we're back in connection with unity consciousness. Not in a way that we're denying the realm that we're in, that we're here to grow and transform and learn. But then we come back to the heart and that wholeness within us and our connection with cosmic consciousness, with unity consciousness. Ixion's orbit is 251 years, and it's very often seen as the sibling, the brother of Pluto, whose orbit is 248 years. So they have similar elliptical orbits, similar in length. Pluto guides us in our own soul's evolutionary journey and what experiences we're meant to have as we journey into the underworld, into the depths of our own unconscious, those issues we're needing to bring to awareness, to heal, to clear. Pluto guides us through experiences of crises or challenges in relationships or in events to help us grow and mature. And Pluto is calling us to increase in our consciousness, in our awareness, be in that journey of transformation. Ixion, in its trying to stay above the surface, so to speak, is showing us where we may be acting out and caught in those issues coming from our unconscious without being aware of it, without pulling it in to the cauldron of transmutation, transformation. So instead of fearing these issues, let us face them. Know that these are parts of us, but they don't have to control us, dominate us, or be operating in us outside of our conscious awareness. Let's look now at the discovery chart of Ixion. There is so much we can look at here. I feel like we could talk about all of this for hours, but I'm trying to give an overview now and give the deeper themes of what we're working in this time. But what you're seeing here is the chart of Ixion's discovery, May 22nd, 2001. And think about how this came just before the events of 9/11, the destruction of the World Trade Center. It came shortly before the US invaded Afghanistan, before the collapse of Enron, which was this company that had really been operating out of greed and illusion. So this discovery of Ixion came at this time where world events were about operating out of reactivity, out of greed, out of impulse. And it's calling those aspects of ourselves individually and collectively into the light of awareness. At that time, Ixion was at 5 degrees of Sagittarius, close to Pallas Athene, Quaoar, in this stellium in Sagittarius, including Pluto. And it was a part of a grand square, which you can see here, that included Chariklo, Saturn, and the Sun in Gemini, and Hygeia. Without going into this in too many layers of complexity, because I really want to focus on what's going on currently, I think this grand square in mutable signs is about how are we looking at the structures of our society and our beliefs and how we're functioning in the world, and healing them, bringing them into that healing relationship with Chariklo and Hygeia, the asteroid, to becoming more into our intuitive understanding of who we are and Quaoar back into balance. Interestingly enough, the Sabian symbol and meaning of 5 degrees of Sagittarius is a game of cricket. How we play or don't play by the rules in society. It is about our ego will needing to learn to be subservient to collective patterns, and I'll add, to our spiritual consciousness in particular. So Ixion comes into our collective awareness, guiding us to look at how are we acting in relationship with those around us and the consequences of our behavior. Are we looking at how we are able to be in that witness self rather than our over-identification with our ego, our impulses and desires? Are we able to see how we're relating to others and the effects of our behavior on others? Are we able to, at that deeper level, see whether we are in alignment with our soul self or acting out from this unconscious, destructive part of ourselves? So let's come back now to this powerful stellium, Ixion, Pholus, Quaoar, Ceres, and at the time of the full moon, it will be Ceres, Quaoar. But the dance of these 4 with each other, I think, is a powerful theme for us in this time. Ixion, bring into awareness those impulses, reactivity, the desires, the attachment to ego that you may need to see and bring into your awareness. Look at those ways in which it's getting acted out in your towards you in your life or in the world around us. We see plenty of ways it's being acted out on the global stage. Pholus is that healing centaur. We take the lid off of what's been suppressed, of what's been hidden. We bring it into awareness to heal it, to be healing it and clearing it and integrating ourselves into wholeness. Then Quaoar, that ancient creation deity coming from the native indigenous cultures of Southern California dating back to 6000 BCE, where Quaoar was the integration of the masculine and the feminine. It was this androgynous creation deity who called everything into creation, singing the song of harmony and calling the rivers, the mountains, the humans, the flowers, the animals, all of creation into that song of the cosmos, that song of joy and love and creativity and harmony. And in this dance with Ixion and Quaoar, across this 111-year period with that 10-degree orb, we are being called to look at, do we choose to operate out of that lower unconscious aspect of ourselves, or allow that to be the dominant energy on our global stage? Or do we choose the path of consciousness to see those shadow aspects of ourselves, but to come into consciousness, come into alignment with the witness self, honor that we are soul selves having a human experience in this realm of duality, but we choose to sing the song of love and harmony, and that song of the awareness of our oneness with all that is, with the earth, the sky, with cosmic consciousness, the joy of coming into our hearts and living from unity consciousness. This is the possibility in this time. This is the gift of what these planetary beings are calling us into. They're supporting us in our own growth and evolution. And it's extraordinary that when they went into exact conjunction and started this new synoded cycle together, and they went into exact conjunction on August 22nd, 1984, at 16 degrees of Scorpio. And the meaning of that is, in the Sabian symbols, we realize that all things in life mirror back to us our awareness of who we are, so we can step into consciousness and practice self-determination. This is the challenge, the incredible opportunity that we have in this time of transmutation to open into more consciousness, not to bypass these shadow aspects of ourselves to jump into higher consciousness, but to see these aspects within us, the realm of duality and polarity, the light and dark within us, and to choose to come into our hearts, to come from unity consciousness, to then be emanating that higher consciousness and love and awareness of our interconnectedness with all that is, the sacredness of all that is around us. Then Ceres, we are in right relationship with the earth and nurturing and caring in our interactions with each other. What a profound story that these planetary beings are bringing to us. And again, as they square the lunar nodes, they're saying, as you work this evolutionary process, you will come into balance. You will be able to sing in harmony with the energies of all of the life around you and move into North Node in Aries these new forms. So let's hold that in our conscious awareness. Again, I am so deeply grateful for this community and the incredible consciousness with which you're each in your own journey and how we support each other in that, so that this is a journey of transformation, transmutation into wholeness, to be living from our hearts, to be emanating this love and harmony and consciousness of the cosmos, to be co-creating a new world together. Blessed be.